And everyone can hear me from now on.
Good evening, everyone. It is super to see you here,
Hi.
Elizabeth and Daphna. What a terrific episode. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. It was such a pleasure. We have folks migrating over from the stream. And so we're very happy to see the viewers of our Q&A climb. I want to encourage anyone and everyone to add to the comments, whether that's to give our guests a round of applause or with congratulations, or of course with questions. We are happy to talk and to chat. So
Hi,
thanks,
Shira.
Shira.
Yay.
Viewers of
Hi, Shira. We've
SalonEra.
never met, but I'm a big fan.
Shira Cameron is a good friend coming to us from the Bay Area. Thank you to Anna Rubin, who
Thank
I
you.
know is in Maryland. Absolutely super. I wanted. Oh, we have a question here. So, how long have you been singing Daphna as part of your professional music work?
Well, it's interesting. I've always sang in choruses, and my first professional, I had to do a mandatory army service as every Israeli from 18 to 20, and I was awarded this very special status called privileged musician, which allows you to continue practicing, having an easier army service, and also travel and continue your education. Um, there was an idea that it would be an early music ensemble, and so it was supposed to be like harpsichord and oboe and recorder. Actually, I don't know how they thought that we would just be traveling from base to base and play early music in like a mash kind of like mess of it ended up that we did just Israeli folk singing for 2 years. So
Okay.
that was my first time that I actually stood on stages and took my hobby of into the to performance.
Yeah.
But since then, I always used to sing in liturgy context, but I never thought of marrying my classical, my concert hall performances with this. And actually, with encouragement of fantastic singers that I really value, and especially Nell Snidus, who just said to me after she heard, it is time to bring this into other performance. Judith?
Yeah, wonderful to see these comments. Fantastic. From Les Hunter, who's a friend of
I
ours in
know. It's so
Cleveland.
great to have
Yeah,
everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight, everybody.
absolutely.
Yes.
You know,
Daphne, did you feel, oh,
go
sorry.
ahead, Elizabeth.
Daphne, did you feel that when you were retreating as a singer that you had to unlearn anything from your original musical training? Did you feel
Yes.
freer in a way?
I have to say that I kind of was frightened to start singing within our early music context, because I have such respect to the profession of singer in that context. So I had to be reminded that there are different styles of singing,
Right.
and to get comfortable. Once I got comfortable in just not being nervous about doing something that I'm not, it has been the most freeing experience, and I just love it.
Absolutely.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. I can relate to that as well. Anybody who ends up playing a lot of instruments and or leaving their comfort zone in a way and then
Yes.
finding new comfort. I remember telling students, especially also as someone who does a variety of things, including a
Yes.
little bit of singing. For me, I stopped feeling like a oboist or even a musician and felt more like an artist. And how important that distinction feels for
Right.
me.
Mm-hmm.
Elizabeth, there's a question here.
She's going
which
right to it.
I know, right? It's interesting when we talked, and it didn't end up coming up in the course of our conversation, but you did, of course, so much work researching Leonora Duarte and the Duarte family, and followed different branches of her family tree backwards, and you found yourself in a strange coincidence, I believe.
Yes, it's true. There is family lore that the German Jewish side of my family is originally from Spain via Amsterdam. And when I was researching Duarte's family tree, I found let's say another 17th century banking family in common, and continued on a couple of pathways and found a direct pathway to Duarte via her Amsterdam relatives. So that was an astonishing surprise.
Yeah,
That is amazing.
that is amazing.
Although all Jews are related, though, anyway, so I guess it's not that surprising. But considering it's a 17th century link, there are about 20 people between her and myself, so it's a pretty close, surprisingly close link.
Yeah. A question here from Tom McIver. We played a little bit of that Smithsonian Folkways recording, which is actually from the 1950s, and was Folkways founder Moses Ash involved in that recording?
To be honest, I don't know, but I know that ethnomusicologist Judith Cohen is with us. So maybe Judith, maybe if you have an answer, Judith is my go-to, and I admire Judith's work and knowledge. Hi. If you know the answer,
Hi, Judith.
would you mind adding?
And a general question about that recording series. whether there are more Smithsonian field recordings that are available from the Sephardic communities and or more that's available online.
I mean, we have now such a wealth of recordings. This one specifically has, I think, the romanzas and the wedding ballads and some liturgical, and it's specifically from the Jews of Tetuan, a specific recording. But again, there are few. I don't know much of other historical ones that the Smithsonian's own. So, but now their archive is available online, so you can just oh, great. Yeah, it's also that this is also on YouTube, all of those songs, but if you find them, but the archival, you can pay a little bit, and the archival, the Smithsonian archival can be you can release PDFs and
Yeah,
listen to them.
I think it's also worth mentioning, Daphne, because you're so intimately involved in it. There's actually some pretty fantastic resources from Pute North America.
Absolutely. So those are more contemporary recordings that we have done in putenorthamerica.org. And maybe we can write for them, because Pute is a kind of tricky spelling, but we did. There are the words. There is context about the Pute itself, like about the poetry and different melodies, and we recorded all of them, so you can compare recording with the musical notations. Thank you.
Fascinating.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and as I told you, Deborah, we're talking about it, that my interest in it has come from love, rather than, that I don't consider myself a scholar of Sephardic music. I don't consider myself a scholar of the diaspora music. There are people who've devoted their lives to this research. I am just a lover of the performance of it and of collecting the melodies and passing it on. I'm more I'm very much about connection and creating bridges in communities.
Absolutely. Daphne, how long have you been in Brooklyn?
I been in Brooklyn since 2000. I moved in 2000 to Brooklyn, experienced 2001, September 2001, in New York, very little time after. I ended up marrying a native New Yorker, and we are based here with our children. And actually, like I've always loved what Elizabeth has been doing, but I also love that we're both New Yorkers. We actually worked together at the Met, and we had a chance to do together a program at the Met. So I think we have here some New York Jewish women.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
It's honorary at this point.
Deborah.
Yeah. No. My dad is still in New York in Westchester, and he's still actually working in the diamond industry on 47th Street and Fifth Avenue.
Wow,
and
incredible.
One of the things that was when we talked about coincidences or feeling different sorts of personal connections is the connection that my own family has to Antwerp, which is actually through the diamond business as well.
It's really amazing.
Yeah.
I came upon, this is just maybe apropos of nothing, but there's a jeweler in Antwerp that advertises one of their engagement rings as the Francesca Duarte engagement ring.
Interesting.
And, Francesca Duarte was Leonora's. Someone just asked a question about Leonora's siblings. There we go. There it is. Francesca Duarte was Leonora's sister, a brilliant harpsichordist, and there's also Francesca Aunt Duarte, another Francesca Duarte, who's a singer. And so this family's legacy connected to the jewel industry results in this sort of modicum of pop culture, the Francesca Duarte engagement ring.
Fascinating.
Yes. But the rest of the Duarte write music. Her brother wrote music. Her brother Diego wrote music. He wrote a number of psalms, interestingly, and probably some chamber music, but sadly none of that survives. Her music is the only testament to her family's music making.
Right. When King George came to England, Handel came shortly after. And did any Jewish musicians come? Do you want to launch into that? Do you want to take it, Elizabeth?
Why don't you start? I'm not so sure about the time of Handel. I could speak to earlier, but
Right. I mean, I think we know, or at least there's different sorts of conjecture and different sorts of research that's been done into Italian musicians arriving, Italian Jewish musicians arriving in England,
yes.
In the 16th century. And those are like the part of the Bassano family, and what became, multiple generations of Lupos as well. They were also instrument builders, particularly Bassanos. And I don't know about late 17th. With the Restoration, which is what you're talking about. I mean, Handel came to England, like 30 years after the Restoration. In any case, but with the Restoration, what we did get a big influx of musicians into England, and those, I think, to my knowledge, are largely French musicians. And when Handel arrives, then you get a lot of Italian musicians, generations of them, like Sammartini and Barsanti and Gemignani and people like that coming in the 17 teens and 20s. You mentioned William Cavendish as a patron of music in Antwerp. He was also friendly with Spinoza, I think. And was Spinoza, does he have any connection to music that we know of?
I don't know that at all. The only connection I can offer is that Spinoza would have been known by educated Jews who also played music. I don't know at all if Spinoza himself was musical.
Sure, absolutely. And where was the first of the PU team that you performed recorded?
Hi, Naomi. By the way, Naomi Levine is the one who brought us originally to WQXR to East of the River to
very nice
in space. So the Mosè Salio that you saw was thanks to her invitation. So the first time I recorded PU team was at B'nai Jeshurun. That was the first, I think the first CD, and it's very apropos, is the Pesach CD, Passover CD, where we did the different, again, melodies that maybe are less known to American Jews for Passover. We also did a High Holiday CD, and then we did the Azmanale Piyut, the Piyut CD that has different occasions. So all of those are available online. Contact me, I can help direct.
Fantastic.
Oh, thank you for all the compliments.
Yeah. I'm curious, actually, Daphna, about the origins of East of the River and when that began and how that began and what its mission was and whether or how it evolved.
It was interesting because Nina and I have played together as a duo, recorder duo, with various orchestras and in different venues. So we started playing. I think our first involvement was Brandenburg Fourth, and I don't know how many Brandenburg Fourth have we played since, but we've had a great. We just at this point, I feel with Nina that we read each other's minds in terms of playing. It's such a phenomenal connection. So when we realized Nina was leading educational, what is now evolved into her phenomenal organization, School Sounds.
Right.
And the original one that was with the New York Collegium. And so, and I came to work for her as well. And then we realized our love for traditions that are non-Western Europeans. And we decided to create this ensemble, which we thought we will take completely outside of the early music. So our original group was the upright bass, accordion, violin or oud, and the two of us. And then I think we started, there was just all these transformations, but the common idea was taking various traditions and honoring their origin. And by that, working with musicians that are steeped in those specific traditions and informing each other with the different ideas, but finding that there's so much common threads, especially with the medieval music, medieval European music, to these traditions that are usually monophonic and based on improvisational and rhythm patterns.
Cool.
Oh, that's my dad.
A question here from someone who may also be related to you about the written record of the Moroccan Piyut with Mose Saliou, or whether that is,
Right.
solely an oral tradition.
Solely oral tradition, and that's why also we have with Moses itself. I think if I'm not wrong, even the words are originally oral. With a lot of the piyutim, as we mentioned, the ones that are liturgical, this is actually written. This poem itself is written, but the melodies are oral, and because of that, you find a lot of versions. If taking in Sephardic music, a lot of versions of fragments of the same melodies with fragments of the same material. But this specific Mosaic is just amazing because while liturgical music was prominently sung by men, those songs were carried and brought to us through generational history by women. And as I told you before, just as my grandmother, my great grandmother, very private women. Mainly, it is a very intimate. And in a way, not that different from the Duarte use, the use of that, the idea of that the music is for the house and for the family and for the friends.
Absolutely.
So many interesting questions.
I know. I don't have time.
Yeah. I don't know the work of Abraham Caceres, but I was going down various rabbit holes and finding it most recently. My impression is that is later repertoire. Maybe I could be wrong, but maybe even later 18th century as well. So
it's interesting discussing Duarte in the context of Jewishness for so many reasons. I mean, I understand this impulse to locate a kind of Jewish sound in her music, but just realizing how actually racist that is. I mean, in the case of Duarte, right, she is, I should say maybe in the case of musicology more generally, Jewish studies as a subgenre of musicology sort of Venn diagrams with ethnomusicology, whereas there's nothing particularly ethnomusicological about my research into her work. It does sort of go against a Judeo-Christian tradition of in some ways, but it's.
I loved though how
it was so interesting, isn't it?
It was just so interesting though. I loved how you referred, Elizabeth, to the idea of not digging into that element, but actually seeing it as the experience of what Jewish women, ethnic women of centuries before us, where was their place, what they could do. So more of just like connecting cultural or ethnic connection. That was very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a kind of assimilation that we see in Germany, the Jews in Germany, let's say in the late 19th century, early 20th century.
There's a question here about Bulgarian influences, as opposed to Ottoman or Turkish ones. And I wondered if you might speak to that.
Well, actually, I personally know of a lot of musicians doing or musicians who have the influences of the Bulgarian and the Ottoman or the Turkish. This is actually it's not related, but that's my family heritage. My family is from Bulgaria. My grandmother's from Bulgaria. My grandfather is originally from Turkey, immigrated to Bulgaria. I am suspecting, and this is just a speculation, that a lot of Ladino groups in a more of a popular settings of Ladino music refer more to Bulgarian or Balkan in general because of the appeal of the scales that are closer to Western music and the some kind of a common thread with that. Turkish music is a very, very complicated music. The classical Turkish music with many mekamat scales that have the microtones, and also it is a very but actually in the folk music, so it might be that is the case. It is hard to approach those scales, but there's a lot of folk music from Turkey that is incorporated into Ladino music.
Cool. You mentioned makam there, and actually, I personally am curious about your experience with playing the ney and how you came to that.
Yeah. Um, so my love to ney I've always loved the ney ever since, growing up in Israel. I just didn't really know exactly what was that sound. I think playing basically a whistle my whole life, which is a recorder, it's like such a specific sound wave and so specific. I think I craved just the sound that is more airy and has a little bit of more flexibility to balance it. The ney is one of the most difficult instruments to play, and that's why we don't have that many ney players. It's not like a common instrument that people pick up. The embouchure is so difficult, and it takes many months, if not a year, to establish like at least a decent sound, and then you have it and it disappears. I've wanted to play it always, and I had one, and I'm gonna cry a little bit, but I wanted to study it, but my husband, who's a percussionist, was studying oud with Bassam Saba, and who was the most one of the deepest musicians of Arabic music in the world. He's unfortunately passed away a few months ago from COVID. It's a complication of COVID in Lebanon, where he led the conservatory. So I just wanted to study it. And then my husband came back and I said, I can't go to Bassam Saba not being able to play a note. And then my husband came back and he said, one day he says, your first 4 lessons are paid. Just make the the appointment. And that was not so long ago in the 2000s in New York. And I've just had the most amazing experience studying with Bassam as adult musician coming to study an instrument.
Right. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Great.
So many
Right.
things. So great.
Yeah, so it's been so wonderful to talk with you both and to share this music. I'm, struck as we were all through the course of our conversation, thinking about and talking about and around kind of women's place in music making, whether that's in the 17th century or in the 20th or 19th or even earlier Sephardic communities. And
21st century.
In 21st centuries,
Yeah.
it's kind of great that it also happens to be the first day of Women's History Month.
Yeah.
That's right.
So I'm terrific and I'm very glad to celebrate that with all of you. And we have a whole bunch more programs coming up that are relevant to this. Our next episode for SalonEra is Women in Music, and it's going to, really explore a lot of this same territory from the point of view of identity, from the point of view of carving out space and where, in what, repertoires or in what genres or in what atmospheres women musicians and composers have been able to create space. So it should be a really terrific episode, that, and we have also our Women of Genius concert program with a few pieces that have actually, I think, been recorded for the very first time.
Wow.
All of the, I think,
Your programming.
the Julie Pinel songs are unrecorded, and I don't think there's any recent and attainable recording of some of the some instrumental works from opera by Mademoiselle Duval, whose first name we don't know. So that is there's a lot to look forward to in March, including maybe the first spring flowers. So thank you so much to our audience. Thank you so much, Daphne and Elizabeth. And we look forward to seeing you all next time.
Yes.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks for tuning
so much.
in, everybody. Bye.